This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under-18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 497 for December 15, 2016. Coming up on today's show, how to advise a friend about a poly landmine. That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Minx, and we have a jam-packed show for you today. So I'm going to say I'm happy to be here, hoping you're happy to be listening. Welcome to our new listeners. Welcome back to those who've been with us forever. And let's dive right into the announcements. First announcement, Lusty Guy and I are going to be speaking at RelateCon in Boise, Idaho, March 31st through April 2nd. And they are offering a special discount for Poly Weekly listeners. If you go to relatecon.org when you buy your ticket and use the code POLYWEEKLY at checkout, you can get a discount on your tickets. Yay! And there's all kinds of interesting poly in the news things happening. The first is something I'm very pleased to announce. There's a new poly web series out there called Compersion, and it is produced by director Jackie Stone and her outfit Enchant TV, and it is a Black and Poly web series. It just finished up its first season. Alan quotes Peppermint, longtime California poly activist, in the Poly in the News blog saying, "It's actually my favorite poly web series so far. There's certainly painful moments in it, but they're painful to me specifically because they so accurately reflect the transition into polyamory. And the acting is great, and the cinematography is good. It's a winner and great exposure for us." Now, the reason it's in Poly in the News section is not simply because it exists, but because they are doing a fundraiser for their second season. Right now, they have $0 towards their second season. And I'll admit, I haven't seen it yet, although I am in talks with Jackie to bring them on the show and find out more. But it sounds absolutely fabulous, and we certainly need more representation of people of color, and it sounds high quality. So folks, if you've got a couple extra bucks, please consider donating. I'll provide a link in the show note along with a link to the episodes from the first season. What if we thought of monogamy as a spectrum? This is an interesting piece by Zachary Zane, who tends to write about bi and poly topics, and he wrote for the Washington Post and said, "That's when I learned I didn't have to like men and women equally to be bisexual. I learned that sexuality was a spectrum, and my point on the spectrum wasn't fixed. My attractions to various genders could evolve. In fact, it's completely normal and even somewhat expected that my attractions to all genders change over my lifetime. In my queer theory class in college," he writes, "I also learned that gender too is on a spectrum. Some of us don't view ourselves as strictly male or female. We can be both, neither, or somewhere in between, aka bigender, agender, or genderqueer. This led me to the question, since sexuality and gender aren't living in a binary anymore, does monogamy have to be?" It's a really interesting article. He quotes some interesting studies, talks about relationship choice, and Alan links to the full article in the Poly in the News blog. Highly recommend you take a peek and read the information. Next up is a very necessary piece entitled How Kinky and Non-Traditional Parents Are Punished by Family Courts. Now, we've addressed this tangentially on the show a couple of times when people write in and say, "What should I do? Here's my family situation." And we always have to tell them it kind of depends on what state you live in terms of the laws. And a lot of these family court decisions are based on the personal biases of the judge that you get in front of. If you get in front of a judge who's been cheated on and thinks that polyamory is cheating, there is no way you're going to be awarded your kids in a nasty poly breakup, especially if your former spouse claims to have seen the light and is not poly anymore. So this is from, the piece is by Neil MacArthur, but it quotes one of our favorite poly activists, Diana Adams, who has had a law practice for non-traditional families for many, many years, and mentioned that she was quoted in this piece. And it's informative, right? It's what we've been trying to say all along, is that these family courts, you can find yourself, I'm quoting from the article, at the mercy of a judge with broad power to decide how much, if at all, you get to see your children. Family courts lack juries, so such decisions are delivered from the pen of a sole person, and the system doesn't treat everyone equally. According to numerous legal practitioners and scholars I spoke to, a widespread bias exists within the system against parents whose views or lifestyles fall outside the American norm, especially sexually. Quote, "I can predict the likelihood of my success by zip code," said Diana Adams, a family lawyer from New York who has spent the last decade working with clients who are LGBTQ, polyamorous, kinky, or otherwise outside the mainstream. They point out, because family court judges are elected by direct vote in many states, their tolerance of the alternative lifestyles tends to correlate with that of the surrounding area. It's an article everybody should read if you have children and you're poly and you need to prepare for an eventual custody battle. And there also, Adam provides a series of very helpful links on do's and don'ts to avoid custody challenges, on child custody and divorce, guidelines for custody cases, and what to do if somebody calls Child Protective Services on you. And I apologize to our non-American friends. This is an American phenomenon. But if there is information that you have about how these type of issues are dealt with in your area or country, please let me know. And finally, the last polyamory in the news is a little political, but it's a review. If you don't want to hear anything at all about Donald Trump and politics, fast forward about 2 minutes. So this Poly in the News piece is Poly in the Time of Trump. This was a discussion that Alan participated in at the Beyond the Love conference. So it's really just his notes about the things that people said in this roundtable discussion. And that's pretty much all it is. There's some interesting points. If you're interested in this, if you're interested in other people's opinions, or what we should do in the face of this, what we should be worried about, how we prepare ourselves, how we should adjust our activism. It's, again, not an organized article, but a series of notes and thoughts from different voices at the Beyond the Love conference. And onward to our very tricky poly topic. I couldn't think of a nice, short, concise marketing headline for this, so I stuck with how to advise a friend in an untenable situation, or how to advise a friend who is about to step on a big poly landmine. The letter itself was rather long and used repeated the same initials for different people, so I'm giving you a quick summary of this letter. So the email was from Amelia, who has a close friend, A, that she was interested in a relationship with. But his partner, C, was monogamous and only recently and tentatively opened their relationship to only casual sex with others outside their relationship. Then, Amelia met and became close friends with D, who then, started seeing A. But D, Amelia's new friend, wanted a relationship with A and asked Amelia's advice, who said, well, you might get hurt because A and C only allow casual sex outside of their relationship, and you're not going to be able to get the relationship you want. Can anybody guess what happened in this situation? Everything exploded. Everyone broke up. And Amelia, who insists she was really just trying to help, was accused of being manipulative by her friend D. I have been in this situation more than once, but not terribly often, which is a thing I'm incredibly thankful for. And I will give, there are a couple of different parts of this I want to address. Things like generally about, let's talk about jealousy and envy. Let's talk about the situation itself. And let's talk about what you can do in the future if you're in this situation, which hopefully you won't be in, but things you could do in the future when you have to deal with this or any other untenable situation where there's just not really a good way to be. So, one of the things that Amelia mentioned in her email was that she felt that she didn't have a right to be jealous of Dee's potential relationship with A because, well, she never, she and A never dated, and Dee was simply a close friend. A was simply a close friend, so what right does she have to be jealous? And I do want to point out that you can be jealous of anything. It is okay to be jealous. It's a natural human emotion. I have seen people including myself, be jealous of someone else's job, of someone else's lifestyle, of a pet. Lusty Guy has a great story about being jealous of a girlfriend's rat. You can totally be jealous of a platonic friend. So it's not, your jealousy is your own to deal with. You get to be jealous of whomever you want. And it's not unusual to be jealous of someone who isn't a partner. Now, I'm going to point this out because if I don't, people are going to write in and give me feedback. So I'm going to say this right now. Technically, what you're experiencing could probably be described as envy, which is it's not that you didn't want D to have a relationship with A, but that you wanted a relationship with A as well, as I read the situation. However, I think jealousy works fine as a blanket term in this situation. Second thing I want to address is let's just acknowledge the fact that it sucks not to be able to be with someone that you want to be with because someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart made a rule against you. And in general, it sucks not to be able to be with someone you want to be with. But it sucks even more when somebody who doesn't know you makes a rule saying, no, you can't. And it can definitely hurt to see someone else with the person you want to be with, especially if that someone else is a close friend of yours. And let's acknowledge that you are not the best person to ask for advice about this. So what would you do if you were in this situation in the future? And I say that as opposed to what could you have done differently because you didn't really know. So let's talk about moving forward. So first thing, and a lot of this advice is going to sound familiar. Number one, ask for what you want. If what you want is a relationship with A, ask for it. Now, you have to be able to accept a no. And yes, simply asking for that type of relationship, which was outside the quote-unquote rules, might ruin the friendship forever. However, you can't complain about not getting something if you never ask for it. So have the courage to ask for what you want and have the courage to hear no. All that being said, what you really asked for advice on was, what could I have done? What would have been a better way if this situation happens again in the future? What should I do? The first thing is you need to own your shit. You need to admit that your bias, you need to admit your jealousy and your envy. I think it would have been completely appropriate to say, look, I am not the best person to ask about this because I really like A and I really want to be in a relationship with him, but I know they have rules against it, so I can't, and it's very frustrating. And so I'm not going to be able to give you unbiased advice because I want a relationship with A too. There is a lot of power in owning your shit, and it may not go over well, but chances are most of the time when you own your shit and you do it in a compassionate way, both to yourself and to others, I find that it tends to go over really well. Second premise is be honest. Now, in a non-poly situation, I have had a friend come to me and ask me for advice about a situation that I saw was a giant landmine. I didn't think there was any way it wouldn't end up in a big blurry mess. And it did end up in a big, gigantic, painful mess. I learned the hard way that if it's a If it is a good friend that you're going to be seeing on a regular basis, you can't keep saying, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so, when every time they come to you for advice. What I have found works for me, and folks, let me know if something works better for you. If a friend comes to you with an untenable situation, you say what you fear will happen once. And then after that, your job is to be a supportive friend. You do not repeat what you said. You don't go back and say, well, I already told you what to think. Your job is to be a supportive friend after that. This took me years to figure out. And I have had friends in these untenable situations. And I found that what works for me is to say, look, honey, I don't think this is a good guy for you. I see a lot of problems with it. I think he's a giant man-child. I think that this is, one of the places where your inclination to take in broken baby birds is actually going to cause you a lot of pain. But I understand that the sex is really awesome and that you really care about him. You asked what I thought. That's what I think. That being said, I hope I'm wrong. And then after that, you have to be a supportive friend. You don't get to, when she comes home crying about, oh, this happened, this thing happened, you have to say, there, I'm so sorry. You can't say I told you so. Okay, you can, but you probably shouldn't say I told you so. You shouldn't say, well, you'll know not to do that again. You just have to be a supportive friend. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Nobody likes to hear I told you so. So that's my 2 cents. And then remember to be kind. You should be supportive of your friend. You of all people know how painful it is to be in love with that particular person and not be able to have a relationship with him because of a rule. If that relationship is really doomed and your friend decides to pursue it, she's going to need you. So it's your job to say it once, own your shit, say it once, and then do your best to put your envy or jealousy aside and support your friend in the very best way you humanly can. It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere. And after that, I'm thrilled to bring in a Happy Poly Moment. This is from Philip, who wrote in, a few years and many ups and many, many downs later, I am sitting in the kitchen of my Airbnb waiting to pick up my date for a fantastic evening of drinks and playtime. She's currently eating dinner with her 2 children and her husband, undoubtedly talking to him about how excited she is to see me and get to know me a little more tonight, our first night together. There are no unspoken expectations and there are no questions, as we have all done our homework and have articulated our needs and desires clearly, including our boundaries. I'm not saying it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows, but damn, it feels good to finally be me and okay with it. So a big thank you, Cunning Minx, you. You are a great resource for the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Aw, now I want to burst into song. Well, Philip, thank you so much for sharing. And by the by, I happened to see in my email today that you can purchase gift certificates for Airbnb. And I was thinking, isn't that a wonderful poly gift? Because very often people have to do overnights. Airbnbs are so much more pleasant than hotels. So if you are one of these people that has poly partners that do overnights and you want to show you support them, you can give them an Airbnb gift certificate. I thought that was a great idea. What do you guys think? Well, that about wraps it up for today's show. I want to give a salute to our special Poly Weekly Playmates. These are the ones who donate $1.99, $4.99, or $9.99 every single month. When our episodes are awesome, when our episodes are crap, when our episodes are on time, when they're late, they keep those donations flowing and they help make it possible for us to do things like create new courseware and travel to events. So thank you so much to our Poly Weekly Playmates. And if you ever have questions, comments, or feedback, email polyweekly@gmail.com, call 802-505-POLY, or you can find us on facebook.com/polyweekly, on Twitter @cunningminx or @polyweekly, or other places around the web. Our show notes are always up with a huge crack ton of searchable archives at polyweekly.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's not all about the sex.